So when I was young, I thought I had the blueprint. You know, get good grades, play all sports, be well-rounded, never disappoint anyone, go to university, work in the family business. You know, the usual. But then I had to remember, it was a plan, not a dream, a plan. And I trusted it completely. But then, one summer after my first year of university, I was standing outside the balcony with my sister. And just minutes before, I was jumping from one balcony to the other because that's just what I do for fun. Next thing I know, I'm in a clinic in the middle of nowhere in Sahel. And then I'm in a room. And then somehow I'm back home in Alexandria. So the next day I wake up and my family tells me it was a seizure. And we go to the doctor. And the doctor, ever so casually, tells me, yeah, that was a seizure and you have epilepsy. For those of you who don't know, epilepsy is a neurological condition where the brain can suddenly misfire and seizures can happen at any time. At that moment, I felt nothing. Maybe it was because I didn't know what epilepsy was. I thought it was just a medical condition. Little did I know that epilepsy was going to be my biggest teacher. Epilepsy taught me that real success is listening before life has to scream. And I learned this through 3 lessons. Lesson 1, stop trying to fit into someone else's shoes. So, how many of you have been out shopping for shoes and you found one that you just love, but it didn't really fit, yet you convinced yourself that it does, right? Well, that happened to me. Almost. You see, after my diagnosis, I was terrified of unpredictability, right? I could get a seizure at any time. I could get it out with my friends. I could get it sleeping, in the shower, while crossing the street, in public, in private. Heck, I could get it right here on stage. And so I went chasing after the one thing epilepsy kept stealing from me: certainty. And I found it in my family business, a heavy plastic manufacturing industry. And for those of you who haven't been in a factory environment before, let me tell you what it looks like. It is a world built on control. Everything has a mold, everything has a process, and a predictable outcome. And I loved it. It felt safe when my body was just so unpredictable. And so I threw myself into it. I also wanted to prove that I didn't just inherit it. I wanted to lead. I wanted to grow and transform and prove to them that I can, that I deserved it. And so I pushed. And I tried to, I worked harder. I tried to engineer predictability out of everything. And on the papers, I was doing everything right. But the dark irony is, the more I automated the factory, the more I automated myself. And you see, throughout this whole time, I was still at risk of getting seizures. And so I was on such a high dose of medication that I was alive, but I wasn't living. And so I went to another doctor. And as soon as I walk in, he looks me in the eye and then turns to my mom and says, "You know your daughter's drugged, right?" And that sentence shook me. Not because of what he said, but because I couldn't tell the difference between my real life and being chemically sedated. And at that moment, I knew that sentence changed my life, because I knew I was gone. A part of me was gone. And many of us do this. We stay in lives that no longer fit because we're just good at them, because feeling feels like betrayal. Sorry. And not only that, but we force ourselves out of bed, and we call it discipline. We tolerate killing ourselves slowly, and we call it ambition. We confuse numbness for strength. But remember, you can still be amazing, yet disappearing. Because what is popular is not always right. And what is right is not always popular. So, yes, you can keep walking in someone else's shoes, just for a while. And remember, the more you walk in them, the more it hurts. Because the shoe will never change, but we can. And so the question is whether we decide to change now, or we keep walking in the shoe and losing ourselves with every step we take along the way. Lesson 2. The safest life can become the smallest one. With my journey with epilepsy, I started to learn about risks. Not theoretically, but physically. I knew I could get a seizure at any time. If I let that fear make my decisions for me, I would have had a very small, controlled, and predictable life. So I decided to do something else. I decided to manage risk. I wanted to manage the risk without abandoning my life. So I chose not to be fearless. I don't believe in being fearless. For me, fearless is usually a performance. So I knew my triggers. I took my precautions. And I told people what to do should something happen. And I knew what I can and cannot control. And then I lived. I traveled, I hiked, I jumped off of buildings, I trekked with gorillas, I swam with whales, I dove with sharks, jumped out of planes, you name it, I did it. I was living. And it's because epilepsy taught me something that no business school ever would. That the goal is not zero risk. The goal is knowing which risks are yours to take and which are fears that are trying to shrink your life. Sorry. And I had to take that lesson with me and as I was doing one of the hardest decisions that I've had to do to date. I decided to leave the family business. And walking away felt like betrayal before it ever felt like freedom. Because it wasn't a job. It was family. It was legacy. And it was pride. But it was something I knew I had to do because I was losing myself. Something did not fit. And so I left. And I started my own business, helping people not to get aligned with themselves and, well, basically walk in their own shoes. And then everything just seemed different. Not because it was certain, but because it was aligned. And that's when I learned that a life built on entirely avoiding the worst case scenarios is not a safe life. It's just a smaller one. Lesson 3. Your body isn't a victim. It's a reporter. You see, when you're training for a marathon and you're running, you get a cramp. You stop. You pause. You slow down. You deal with it. We adapt. Because if you don't, your leg will eventually force you to. And our body is exactly like that. Our body gives us the energy, the force, and the ability to be, to live. It's exactly like a bank account, right? You can't keep withdrawing without depositing. Eventually, the body will go for what it's owed. This happened to me. This one time, I was in New York for my sister's graduation, and I discovered this new workout. And I wanted to be at the top of the leaderboard. I wanted to beat everyone, even beat myself, and not lose my streak. One morning, as I was walking to the workout, ironically, I get a seizure. I hit myself and I fall on the curb. Close my eyes, next thing I know, a group of strangers are looking at me. And then I'm in an ambulance. And then I'm in a hospital. And the doctor tells me, you have a minor concussion and a black eye. I have no reason to keep you. But I advise you to rest. naturally, I did what I would do. I got up, took a cab, and left. I went to see my family. Went there, all smiles, everything's fine, it's okay. And then I take off my glasses. And I see the look in their faces. And that's when I knew that, oh, by the way, that was me with the black eye. And that's when I knew. The shield I've been wearing for so long is so heavy, but I never knew because I got so used to the weight. It became natural to me. But this isn't a story about epilepsy. It's about every burnout that happens to us, and not overnight, because it never comes out of nowhere, right? Every fatigue, tension, headache, anxiety, those sleepless nights, a pimple, a cold sore, these are all reports. They're not weaknesses. They're reports. Our body's trying to tell us something. And it's trying to send us a message. It's trying to tell us the truth. Because if you don't listen when it whispers, it will find a way to make you listen when it screams. So sometimes slowing down is the only reason you get to run the marathon at all. So if you ask me now, how can I start? In all honesty, I can't answer you for certain because everyone's different. Everybody's different and every body is different. How can we start walking in our own shoes? How can we start living life to the fullest? How can we listen to our body's reports? The only thing I can tell you is tonight, before you go to sleep, think of these 3 questions. What whisper have I been ignoring? Whose life am I living and whose approval am I living it for? And what would life look like to stop performing? Because epilepsy taught me that the most important thing to manage is not your business. It's not your team. It's not your image. It's your relationship with yourself. So the question is, are you ready to stop performing and start listening? And remember, nothing changes. If nothing changes, nothing changes. Thank you.